And at this time, I'm going to introduce our speaker. And I've asked Chris from Rochester, New York to come up and speak to you tonight.
Hey guys, Chris, alcoholic.
Chris.
Good to see you. We've been thirsting for human company. We've been jogging around in a tin can for quite a while, doing a lot of Zooms and trying to avoid a lot of metros where small towns that had meetings no longer have them. Or if they do have them, you go there at the time it's on the meeting list and they don't exist. So anyway, good to see you all. We're here for a couple months over at Crazy Horse, and anyway, how it was, I'm going to do the, before and after. How it was, I was never enough. I was always less. I never was right. Whatever I had was not the right brand. My grades, whatever they were not good enough. There was something missing. And that's the way it was. At about 8 years old, my brother and I got into some really bad wine that my parents were making. And it was almost like drinking vinegar. It was just horrible. I think we had half a glass each, and nothing much happened. And we said, that's not too great. And time went on, and I became a very practiced chameleon. I had many masks. I could do the greaser thing, I could do the hippie thing, I could do the athletic thing, the jock thing, whatever. And that seemed to work. I always felt I was on the outside, though. And at one point in high school, I got into this Pi Y / fraternity, and now I was in the in crowd. And of course, they have, drinking things to do in high school. So the first night I had beer, I drank alcoholically. I drank to excess. Had a great time for a while, then broke a lamp, broke some other furniture, fell down some stairs and dry heaved and puked all over the place. And that seemed to be kind of like a pain in the butt. So this being the 60s, it was easier for me to get high and take LSD than it was to jerk around trying to find beer. So I spent from about 13 on up to about, 18, basically over here in the psychotropics. And I loved it, and it was all good. And then, this was the time when Rockefeller, in New York, I don't know what's going on out here in the nation, but at that time, Rockefeller had this 3 strikes and you're out. So if you get found with a couple of roaches in your car ashtray, you can go to Attica and get butt fucked. No, I'm serious. For a roach. It's like... And I turned 18. At that time, it was, At that time, it was you can get yourself to Vietnam and get killed, and you can drink. So I started drinking, and I had a good time, and I loved it. And I made it a point to practice my drinking, to make the bed stop spinning, to be able to drink more than I could before and increase my tolerance and so forth and so on. So, from 18 until, 40 something, I basically drank every day, except when I couldn't get it or I was too sick from the day before. And that's what I did. I loved it. I managed to avoid the draft, and I'm glad I did. My hat's off to those who went, but I did manage to avoid it. And I'm still here. And as time went on the alcohol train, I just kept drinking, and I was just having fun. It was kind of okay. And my studies in college, part of it was about the Tang Dynasty poets in the 700s in China. And they were called the 7 immortals of the bamboo grove. And all they did was lie around drunk in the bamboo grove and write poetry. And I was going, this is it, And then the Beats were my heroes. They're all a bunch of drunkards, and that was for me. Anyway, I went on about my life drinking and got to a point where I remember waking up one time on New Year's Eve with a screaming hangover. And this ambulance went by right out in front of my apartment. And it just was like, whoa, it was just so painful. And I thought maybe I'll throttle back a little bit, So I did, a little bit, but not much. And ended up having other periods where, I was noting some excess, And so I would do things like, instead of drinking a half gallon of wine when I got home from work, I would start looking at cracks in the wall. Anything just to go away and relax. But that didn't last too long, and I kept at it. And, the first, and then, I just kept at it and kept at it. And the first DWI happened in Michigan. And I remember lying on the floor of the drunk tank on Thanksgiving Eve, singing, "It's a thin line between love and hate." And anyway, then they put me into a class, and, who cares? So what? My mistake was getting caught, And so I kept at it. And then migrated I spent a couple of years in Michigan, a couple of years in California. Then I was back in Rochester. And of course, by this time I was a bartender. Because if I'm drinking, I need to be the high priest of poison. I need to be able to watch you change. I need to be able to, be in charge of the sacraments, and be able to drink after hours till 7 or 8 in the morning. So I did that for years and years, and frankly, I had a good time. It was a lot of booze, a lot of sex, a lot of drugs. It was good, It was good until there was a second DWI. And that kind of, I finally got a nice car, a coupe that could really... I turned to a mechanic at the bar and I said, "Jimmy, what's the deal when the front end starts shaking and you're doing about 105? And he goes, "Well, Chris, that's God telling you to slow down." So I totaled that car and walked away without a scratch. Nobody else was hurt, thank goodness. And then I left the country. And jogged around for a while, for many years, a lot of different places, and kept drinking until I got to certain areas where there was not a lot of alcohol, like Afghanistan and Iran and India and Pakistan and all these places. And what I would do then is go to the government opium office, and or get some ganja or something. But as soon as I got from Istanbul over to Greece, alcohol again was everywhere. It was everywhere. And so I started drinking again. It was great. And so I got back to New York. I thought I'd pick up a few bucks and then hit the road again. And I got snagged. Or I hit a snag, or I was whatever. Anyway, so I got back into bartending for a while. And alcohol was beginning to make all these choices for me. If you didn't drink, there's no reason for me to be a friend with you. Why would I be friends with you? It chose my work for me. I mean, I was a bartender. I was having a great time, making a lot of money, reasonable amounts of money for the age and the time. My ex walked into the bar and started throwing big tips at me, and that got my attention. And then she got me. And next thing I know, I'm married and so forth. And so the occupations went from bartender. And my ex's family had an institutional happy hour. And I mean, not that they were institutionalized, but they had a ritual at 5 o'clock every day, boom, happy hour. And I thought, wow, this is the kind of family I can relate to. And she was a drinker, and I was a drinker, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the next occupation was sales, because if I want to go on Wednesday, in the afternoon on Wednesday, and if I want to go shopping for a crystal bourbon decanter in various nice places around town, gift shops, I have that option. I can make my own appointments. So, or if I'm too hungover and I need to reschedule a meeting the next morning, I can do that. So alcohol chose that particular occupation for me, and I kind of basically did that sales thing for decades. Anyways, things were getting, I was drinking more and more, and I was getting emptier and emptier. And it was like, I got to the point where twice a year, basically, I would start crying, because everything was just crap. Here I am, I got a nice house, got a nice dog, got a nice wife, got a car, got a job, deep-a-da-ba-doop. But everything was so sad. It was like sad. What the hell? But I kept at it. I kept drinking. And it got to the point where, I never understood the phenomenon of craving. I mean, I knew that I didn't even really know, but I would take a drink and say, well, I'm only going to have one. And I'd never really think through the idea of, well, one's going to lead to 10. And it was a nightly affair, basically. And I drank probably every once in a while. Blackout's okay, but it was getting to be like 3 or 4 nights a week where I'm blacking out. Having segments of my life which are brownouts. They're not entirely blackouts, but they're like, well, I used to work with her, I think, or, anyway, there was just, it got to the point where I thought, okay, life's a bitch, then you die. That's how it is. Suck down my bottle of Johnny Walker a day, and at some point I'll be dead. Anyway, things were not right, but I never ever tried this. A couple times maybe I tried to throttle back, but I never tried to stop drinking because I couldn't see the point in it. I mean, why would I want to stop? And then it got to the point where, well, I started to have dry heaves in the morning, and I'm going like, oh, this is kind of getting not great, But even then, it was only dry heaves, I mean. So I kept at it. And, I'm obviously having impact on my marriage, impacts on my job, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a very famous ice storm in 1991. And that ice storm it knocked out power for the entire city for 7 or 8 days or 10 days in some areas. And what happened is it knocked out power in our neighborhood, and so the power, this is a phrase I use, the power went out, the lights went out, the heat went out, and the wife went out. So I'm sitting in a dark living room with the stove burners on, with a plate full of candle stubs with my dog. And this voice says to me, and I'm by myself, and this voice, auditory hallucinations, they're just wonderful. I would hear the Eagles on the radio, and there was no radio, But this voice says to me, he says, Chris, maybe you've had enough. And I thought, well, yeah, yeah. Okay, so then I went and made a martini. I used to have rock glasses at this point. Rock glasses were 24 ounces. It was not screwing around. And no, I mean, they were rock glasses, but they were big, And I made an absolute martini, lemon and lemon twist and olive, and it was delicious. And I drank it, and then that was the last drink I had. And that was March 1st, 1991. That was the last drink. I was done. I had a full liquor cabinet, 18 bottles of booze, I mean, you name it. I had a St. Pauli Girl Dark in my refrigerator for 6 months, 8 months of my initial dryness. I wouldn't call it sobriety. But I mean, I had no interest. I was simply done. I was like, I'm done. It's like somebody just it's like turning off the mic. I didn't have any compulsion, any interest. I was just done. And this presented a series of problems because there was no awareness at all that any other agency other than my own supreme power made that decision. So at this point, I got no friends left. My last drinking buddy wasn't hanging with me because we weren't drinking. I had no friends left, and I said, this is getting kind of lonely around here, taking my dog to bed, And so I said, I knew about AA, so I said, I might as well go to... Anyway, I was seeing shrinks and this and that. So one afternoon, I'm seeing one shrink. Then I'm going to group therapy. And for some reason, I'm really kind of hitting an emotional bottom. And I'm turning to myself going, I'm so well and truly fucked now. I might as well go to an AA meeting. Because it's all well and good to spend, X dollars on a shrink, and that's upmarket, right? You guys are sitting around in some church basement. What the hell? And at this time also, I came in here at a business. I was grossing over $1 million in revenues. Leather jackets and cars and vacations in Spain and blah 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 blah. So I came in with all this stuff, right? And meanwhile, I'm hitting these emotional bottoms. And so I started going to a meeting just because there's nobody around. I had no friends. So I'm going, oh, I hear what he said. I can say that too. Or, walking the walk. And I'm coming around and meanwhile, the wife is fighting with me in court and things are, whatever. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm coming around, and I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing that, and you guys, I'm getting to know a few people, and it's not all bad. Got some place to go, right? And so I'm coming around about 8 months, some woman with 22 years says, Chris, you can chair a first step for us, can't you? I go, well, of course I can. I quit drinking. So I sat in this group of about a small group, like 8 people, and I held court. Let them know how I quit drinking, how I had a full liquor cabinet and a St. Pauli Girl Dark in the fridge, and I had no interest and everything was good. And this person with 22 years was sitting right next to me, and she turned to me and said, Chris, I think you're full of shit. I think you better get with your sponsor and find out what's going on with you, because you're in very dangerous territory. And the first thing I wanted to do was pull one of those Patrick Swayze throat rips. Where you're going behind the trachea and rip the throat out, from Roadhouse. But what it did is it scared me, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just full of crap, I was just like, blah, 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 So I didn't have a sponsor. Why would I need a sponsor? I put the drink down. I didn't have a home group. Why would I need a home group? I can go here, I can go there. What's that all about? Anyway, it scared me enough to actually get a sponsor. And I got a sponsor and started working the steps. And basically what he did was listen to me. I mean, he just listened and listened and listened to me. And my brain was like a pinball. I couldn't think one thought. I had to think 6 at the same time. It was, anyway, he says, there's 2 parts to the first step. Unmanageability is the second half. And first of all, I had to get that the whole first step took me 18 months. I mean, what do you mean I'm powerless? I thought I put the drink down. Some voice came and said, you don't need this, you're done. That was me, right? And he goes, was it? So that was hard for me to actually understand or grasp. Then the second half being, my life was unmanageable. I was managing quite well. I had a bookkeeper, a CPA, a divorce attorney, a bankruptcy attorney. I would spend my off hours putting together spreadsheets of my bankruptcy creditors. And so I thought I was managing pretty well, what the hell. And anyway, it all blew up and went to hell. And ended up bankrupt, foreclosed, my car got repossessed, and I ended up with a tax lien of about $100,000, it's going like, wow. And all this happens while I'm working on my third step, and I'm going, who the fuck wants this? This is God's will for me, is everything you ever worked for, just rip it up, kick it away. Acceptance was very difficult, because without all my props, without my leather jackets and my cars and my business and my money and my bidi, babadoo, who the hell was I? So all these things were going away, and I'm going, oh, this third step, man, I don't know. and it's just really hard. It's just over 3 years, working that through, and just it was tough. And then the resentment, the anger, and the fear. The resentment of certain things by the ex and by the business. Having a thing happened during I was trying to sell the business, and that deal got squashed by someone who could leverage it and basically steal it. That's what he did. Smooth move on his part. So I'm trying to accept all this, and I'm putting off the fourth step as much as possible, because I am not only did I put the drink down, but I'm the worst person in the world. I don't want to do a fourth step. What the hell? I have date rape in there. I've got theft. I've got all sorts of stuff there that I don't want to look at that. So I didn't, and I kept putting it off, and finally I couldn't put it off anymore. And so I did it, and when I looked at, the fourth step, looked at, this idea of causes and conditions, the nature of my wrongs, it's like, I'm not going to get too heavy into this, and I will talk about the rest of the steps as well, but my mother came up to see me when she was still alive. She was 70-something, and she says, "I want to talk to you." And I said, "Oh, okay. Talk." And she goes, "Oh, no, I want to come visit with you." I said, "Oh, okay." So she comes up, sits down in my living room and says, "I wanted you to know that I used to beat you regularly and somewhat severely while you were under the age of 2. And I said, "Well, that's interesting. I never knew that. I mean, I had no recollection of it, mercifully, I guess. But it did make sense to me about why I get so tightly wound and why I have certain other things going on with my own behaviors and makeup." So I took, a lot of this stuff, this causes and conditions for me was like, what is the adult child of the alcoholic situation here? If I look at my own family dynamics, how did that impact who I ended up being? And anyway, I got the fourth written out, and my first sponsor wouldn't hear it. Well, it just confirmed to me that I'm the worst person in the world. If I'm so horrible that he's not going to hear my fourth step, what the hell? So I found a guy to do it with, and fired. Well, I didn't really fire. We parted ways. He ended up having a massive heart attack, and I moved on to my current sponsor I've had for like 28 years or something. I don't know. So I did the fifth. And, it was 4 hours, and I was crying and snotty, but I did it. And then I went out, I was driving back, and I went through a cornfield and ripped it up and burned it. And the ashes just went wherever they went. And the sixth step was such that, the sixth and seventh I just really didn't spend much time on them. I spent probably a year and a half looking at them, but they seemed to be like this endless infinity loop that my defects never went away. They just seemed to be, they would tamp down and get very subtle, but they became like grain in the wood. And if you put me under stress or get me all fired up about something, then it starts popping again. And so I'm going, I don't know, and never did I humbly asked him to remove my defects. I thought I was going to fix myself. It doesn't matter what I read, what I read doesn't end up at times what I think, and what I hear doesn't end up at times what I think, which is why I keep coming back, because my thinking is off. So the seventh, 6 and 7 went on for a while, then I said, well, I moved down to the 8th, got that list up, and for the most part, that's pretty much done. But the 9th step took me 9 years. And by the way, I hope you guys do it much more quickly than I do. But I went from having a business that was making grossing over $1 million a year to delivering pizza, because I couldn't deal with anything. I could not wait tables. I didn't have the psychological coherence to go wait a table and do all that. But I could give you a box of pizza. I could do that and take a 20, So I'm climbing up out of the swamp, delivering pizzas, doing this, doing that, getting some telemarketer job for blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, I'm hanging around and doing the steps, doing my 8th, and this young lady over here is coming back from Rehoboth one day. She's all blonde out, and tanned up, and very tight white shorts. And I said, ooh, her. And it wasn't just the tight white shorts. But anyway, I'd seen enough 12 stepping and 13 stepping and this and that, and so it was not like, we'd known each other for years and years before we, got connected. But anyway, one thing leads to another, and I'm 45 years old. One of the primary stressors on the first marriage is infertility, right? My boys are not swimming because I'm smoking dope and drinking Johnny Walker, and the wife's got endometriosis. So where the hell are we going? So we're separated, and then my current wife, I love that phrase. My current wife is using contraception, and we end up pregnant. And I'm like 45 years old, and I'm going, what the hell? How did this happen, Well, it's, but, it was not a plan. There was no plan here. And it was just it's been just a huge gift, And meanwhile, I'm crawling up from delivering pizzas to making 300 a week in this shitbox cube farm, and then the kids getting born, and then we're moving from, and then anyway, it's like things are just moving ahead, and all of a sudden I'm like employable. I'm working with, I don't know if you guys know the whole telecom routine, but I started at AT&T, ended up with MCI, and I was selling internet in 1992. And everybody would say, what the hell do I need that for? And I would go, well, it was all business. It was not, I was business to, I was selling to businesses. And they would say, well, what do I need that for? I said, it's another channel of distribution, blah, 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 blah. Well, the internet was like this massive balloon, and I just held on and rode it for 10 years. It was fantastic. It was absurd. I went from delivering pizzas to flying all over the country with an expense account and going to Borneo for sales conferences and having international clients like Heinz and Bayer and Pittsburgh Paint and Glass. It was just unbelievable. Universal Studios was a client. I would fly to LA, do a pitch, and fly back. It was a pain in the ass because I couldn't even take a day off to go take a tour. There's no time. I was so busy. But brings me back to the 9th step. About this time, I've still got $100,000 tax lien sitting out there. So I had to deal with that, and that got dealt with finally. Oh God. And long story short, the bigger house, better cars. And of course, the dot-com bubble blew up. And all of a sudden, I'm unemployed and going, oh, shit, what do I do now? And they used to call me Bubble Boy, because I would look into the abyss, being the market that we call, the job market, the abyss, looking for something. And I'd see this bubble come up, and it would be like the internet, and I'd grab onto it. And the next bubble was mortgages. So I grabbed onto that, and I was riding that bubble for 7 years. Or I wrote it too long, should have got off earlier. But anyway, but it was a reputable, I was in a reputable situation. It was, and then that blows up, then I'm going, oh, what the hell am I going to do now? And I found myself at 62 years old going door to door, knocking on small business doors in the middle of winter. The great Christopher, who used to fly to do pitches to the Cartoon Network, because now I'm knocking on doors in the ghetto. And I'm going, what the hell? But I didn't drink. And at one point, when I was about 6 years in, I was flatlining because I was so on AA. I was flatlining. I was so busy with a kid and a new job and a new house. I was just like going to one meeting every 2 weeks and this and that. And then my sponsor says, well, Chris, by the time I see you next, I want you to have 4 sponsees. And I said, 4, that's a piece of cake. Are you kidding me? Because they never call. And once you firm it up, they don't call you. And if they do call you, then they don't call you again. And if they do start sitting down with you, you get to the 3rd step and they disappear because they don't want to do a 4th. And damn, if all 4 of them didn't keep me. And that got me really more grounded, and I really do believe that when I'm better grounded, I become a better worker, and more job opportunities were popping up, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the 10th step, the 10th step it's been a growing project, because the promptly part was it's very difficult for me to do it promptly. I can come back the next day and say, geez, I really didn't mean that. Or I meant it this other way, and I'm sorry about that. And the 10th step, to make amends, to change behaviors, as opposed to say, sorry, like a parrot, And then this idea of, continued to take inventory throughout the day. What? Oh, all day long. Okay, yeah. It means also like not cutting off other drivers. And I used to imagine every sign that had a speed limit, beneath it were letters that said, except for Chris. And so I went from that to like trying not to cut off people and be more polite. And so that's a work in progress. A lot of the stuff I picked up, I have a reading group that's been going on for years, and we do like Drop the Rock and the 4 Agreements and the this and that. There's a lot of stuff going on too that we work on 6 and 7, and currently we're doing some other stuff on the 11th. But I'll just get quickly on the 11th step. Basically all anyone has to do in the Episcopal Church is, do whatever they do at the end of the, end of life or whatever. And I'm essentially, an Episcopal. But when I was 11, conscious contact, I got confirmation, this and that. They put the hands on, and nothing happened. I'm going like, what the hell? What's that all about? The next thing you know, we're not going to church anymore. And my old man happened to be, among other things, a student of Asian studies. And so he's introducing me to Buddhism and Hinduism and taking me to the Zen Center, and we're, this and that and the other thing. And then I'm dropping LSD, and of course it's God everywhere, with no name, just that consciousness. And then there were all these studies of classical Chinese philosophy that I took, blah, 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 blah. And the whole 11th step thing was, God as I understand him, and I had no understanding. I had all this understanding, but I had no relationship with any being. I knew about this, I knew about that, but there's no relationship. Part of this higher power thing is I really couldn't get into, my upbringing church stuff. But I could get into the gift of desperation, G-O-D. I could relate to a group of drunks. You knew more about staying sober than I did. I could relate to good, orderly direction that might be in your suggestions, like get a sponsor, work the steps, pass it on, get some sponsees, get a home group, get a service. I could relate to that. I could relate to the great outdoors, G-O-D, right? I could relate to all these other iterations of what that higher power was. I have no idea what it is at this point. I just kind of go with the flow. But anyway, I do prayer and meditation. I get out the knee pads morning and evening. I say, ask to be kept sober. I asked 3 times to have my thoughts, words, and actions guided, and I asked to be kept sober. And then at the end of the day, I say thank you. And part of the thank you is, okay, I walk into a doctor's office and the doc says, Chris, you need open heart surgery. And I said, Roy, why don't we do this? Why don't you go back out that door? I'll go out this door, and we'll come in again, and we'll sit down. And he goes, no, you need open heart surgery. I said, oh, that's interesting. He goes, well, you're taking that kind of well. So I had some open heart surgery. And without it, I had a 50-50 chance of walking down the street and dropping dead. And it was, and then a little while later, someone said, well, you need cancer surgery. So, and I said, thank you thank you for the blessings of this day, because it really doesn't, not everything's worked out like I wanted. But I'm still here. I'm grateful to be here. Cancer-free at this point, and currently no restrictions on the heart, and that sort of thing. So that's all good. I keep coming back here because, as one of the old timers said, I never know what I'm going to need to hear. He says, I might be in a car accident, I might have a wife die on me suddenly, I might have this, that, and the other thing. And if I go to a meeting, it will have happened to someone, and they will have shared it, and I will know what to do. So I keep coming back because I don't really have a drinking problem anymore. In March 1st, I'm not counting the coins quite yet. On March 1st, I'll have 32 years. But, that's then. And so I haven't had a drink in a while, but my thinking is still, I have to read pages, 64 or 68 periodically. I have to remind myself to place others first, to, keep my focus off myself. I have to remind myself to practice the principles in all my affairs. I have to remind myself, or you guys have to remind me. And one of the reasons we're here in Havasu City is to catch all you, load up on AA, because we're heading off into Kayenta and the Navajo lands, and there's not even a cell signal out there. So we'll be able to carry some of your wisdom and strength with us. And the 12th step is what I'm doing now. Okay, somebody asked me to chair. I said, sure, I'll do it. You know, and I've had 2 sponsees die on me. I've had many others, actually stay sober, which is kind of cool. And many others, the majority of them didn't, and better them than me. So service, having had a spiritual awakening, will carry this message. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not a banker, I'm not a chauffeur anymore to anyone who wants to make me that kind of sponsor. I'm not even, I've got a couple of lagging sponsees that I stay in touch with by phone. I talked to my sponsor for 45 minutes today on some things. Not about this so much, but just other stuff. So, 12-step, that's what I do. This is what's kept me here. I hope to keep coming back. I do plan on it, but who knows? Thank you.